Hello, is that recording? Is it working? Recording.
There's a record
Yeah.
on my side, yeah.
Recording. Okay. Hello, and welcome once again to a Wednesday Climate Emergency Centre Network webinar where the wisdom being dispensed is from Kobina, who's doing some absolutely amazing work locally and internationally in the UK and in many countries around the world. They're linked up to with a group called PRALER, which is Planet Repairs, Action Learning and Educational Revolution. And they're working on some amazing projects all around the world to link in many different groups and, and accelerate the education on the kind of things we really should be focusing on for the planet repairs and the environment in the future. So without too much further ado, over to Kobina. Thank you very much for coming. Tell us about PRALER and what you're doing. Thanks.
So, yeah, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining. Thanks, Brother Phoenix, for extending the link. We've talked for a while about the need to talk about how we link these things in. Before I was formally involved with the International Solidarity Network, XR, and a few campaigns before that. As said, I'm one of the coordinators of PRALER, but PRALER is essentially an action learning network of various communities of resistance initiated by a coordinating council called the Majority World International Solidarity Coordinating Council of Communities of Resistance, which is basically formed tricontinentally between some grassroots networks in Asia, in South America and Africa, who wanted to start sharing more actively, tactics towards planet repairs, think about how we can start sharing our battles and make progress forward. And this is kind of also, I kind of want to open just by saying that not only greetings to everyone, but there's kind of a strange cause of, even though it's quite a strange time right now, of celebration, to be honest, because we really should feel when we can make our way through what the news is saying, that the people kind of are winning right now. We are getting battered and hammered, but solidarity matters. Solidarity is working. And the active feelings between communities now being shared everywhere, between the response on the streets to what we're seeing in Palestine and on the streets. We're seeing horrific images and we're seeing what the system will do when it's pushed. But we are seeing that there is a connected world and people do care. And when that uprising comes up, it does matter because the establishment is feeling it and they are panicking and they are scared. And I know that's a strange message, but we should feel emboldened by that because we are making gains and that matters. And it matters to, I can say for a fact, it matters to our communities in West Africa, where my heritage is from, when they see people in the global north holding up their flags of resistance, sharing their symbols, it makes a difference. People feel encouraged that they're not alone in this fight, and it means a lot to know that there is that solidarity. And so everything that I'm going to share today is basically going to be about how are we now going to take this solidarity to a next level? And actually, while there's stuff to introduce, a lot of it is to actually hear feedback from maybe actions you've seen and how they've worked out for yourselves. And then I'll drop back into things that are upcoming. So without further ado, I wanted to kind of actually lead with a video that was shared to us to popularize here. And these are the types of materials that are kind of like emerging through this project of PRALER, whose main job really is to democratize knowledge, to share information, to stop the monopoly of the media on what we're seeing. Because I think if people saw what I see every day, we would be really activated and really hyper. Because every day, if you're tapped into the right channels, there are battles being won by communities. Communities are taking their lands back. Communities are rising up. Communities are defending their forests. It's not all doom and gloom. And a lot of these tactics of how it's happening, how communities are getting so organized. Now, it's our job to realize that that's our right to know it. It's our right to have that information. In fact, that's what we should be being taught in schools. That's what should be on our media. That's what should be in our climate emergency centers, I'd argue, right? And so this is kind of the main objective of PRALER. And so the first video just to share.
Yeah, that's ready when you need it. Okay.
Has been shared by the 7-8pm, which is a grassroots women's network of artisanal and unsalaried peasant workers in Peru. And they shared it as a promotion not only of the work they're doing, but an invitation to collaborate.
Las mujeres indígenas del Perú.
Sorry, one sec. Do the it's a Peru Women's Collective.
Yeah, it's a union. It's actually a union of more than 100,000 peasant and artisanal workers in Peru, working towards, you know, sovereignty, agroecological sustainability, and, you know, empowerment. And they've got really powerful examples. So it's an invitation also to collaborate as well.
Donde las mujeres han sido históricamente marginadas, las mujeres indígenas del Perú levantan su voz, mostrando que la soberanía alimentaria y el empoderamiento son caminos hacia una ciudadanía global y la descolonización del pensamiento.
La tierra es nuestra madre y nosotras las mujeres indígenas somos cuidadoras y labramos con nuestras manos, cuidando nuestra identidad, nuestra cultura y preservando nuestros saberes ancestrales.
Aprendamos una de otras, compartimos nuestras historias, nuestras lenguas y nuestras luchas. En este espacio de aprendizaje en conjunto intercultural que nos permite ver el mundo desde múltiples perspectivas y a valorar nuestras diversidades y nuestras experiencias.
Nuestra lucha es diaria. Resistimos frente a un sistema que intenta despojarnos de nuestras tierras, nuestras tradiciones, nuestros derechos, pero nos mantenemos firmes con la convicción que juntas podemos vencer.
Nuestras luchas no son aisladas. Alzamos nuestras voces junto a otras mujeres en el mundo porque entendemos que es la solidaridad, es la clave para luchar contra la injusticia global. Todas las mujeres tenemos problemas, pero con diferentes realidades.
All right. Wrong.
Nosotras las mujeres en el Perú nos ayudamos para defender nuestros derechos, nuestra tierra, nuestra cultura y para todo el mundo, y todas somos más fuertes.
Aprender sobre nuestras realidades, costumbres y las de otras mujeres es una ayuda para poder entender los contextos políticos y luchar por la equidad. La educación es la herramienta más poderosa para la transformación de todos nuestros pueblos.
La fuerza radica en nuestra resiliencia. Hemos enfrentado ciclos de opresión, pero nuestras raíces son profundas y nuestra esperanza es la que nos impulsa a seguir adelante. El liderazgo de las mujeres es importante para el cambio. Nosotras conocemos nuestras comunidades. Cuando ocupamos un cargo, aseguramos que nuestras voces sean escuchadas y respetadas.
El cambio no sucede solo. Necesitamos actuar juntas, organizarnos y luchar en cada frente para asegurar que nuestras demandas sean escuchadas y atendidas. Nuestras comunidades son nuestro refugio. Aquí nos cuidamos, nos apoyamos y encontramos la fuerza para seguir adelante enfrentando las dificultades juntos.
Okay, all right. Not that share. Okay. So, all right, that's fantastic, Kobina. Thank you.
Yeah. So, I mean, really, I mean, really practically, that was a powerful example of one of the creative ways that colonized grassroots communities are making big gains. And so much so that last year, the president of the union, President Lourdes Juanca, she was actually, I mean, so heavily persecuted that she had to flee the country. I mean, this is a mum with children. And one of the initiatives we set up, which is the Planet Repairs International Observatory, was trying to build a grassroots network of people supporting her in exile, actually being able to like safely travel between countries, and trying to make sure that she had safe passage to return back into Peru. And she's currently back there, so we can give thanks again to solidarity and people come together to organize and build visibility and little things like promoting her image and allow people in the petitions international community to know about it. These are all things that kind of stopped the sort of government there kind of really cracking down. And so this is, as I said, like a grassroots women's network of more than 100,000, poor and indigenous, like farming and women. And they've got something to tell because, they've organized at a mass scale, taking back of their lands and building this sovereignty. Now I say that because we're hoping to have a delegation of them, not that many, just a few, come to the UK in about a month's time at an initiative called the Decolonial Open University. And so while there's lots of ideas about that, I want to tie in concretely about what we do with the CECs. In a really real practical sense, one thing that people should be aware of is the Decolonial Open University, which I'll come back to at the end, where people will be coming in person to the UK, where they'll be trying to tour around different parts and meet different cities and community spaces, and build their own networks of like collaboration so that, we want to move to the point where we can take action together, coordinated action, because we know that this system is globalized, it's coordinating its action all the time. When it acts in one place, it also acts in another. And this is how it kind of maintains control, because it can always play this global chess game. And we need to get to that point also where our communities are also seeing each other in different parts of the world, working together, collaborating, sharing resources, sharing knowledges, and reminding ourselves that it's one planet.
Kobina, I want to just say there, that's a really important point you made there about, all being globally linked up. But we were part of the anti-globalization movement from 2001 to 1999, Seattle, it kind of started. But through things like indie media, it spread all around the world. And we had Indian peasant farmers movements linked up with Zapatistas, linked up with, Western European activists and things, and NGOs, all sorts of groups. And we managed to put 250,000 people on the streets of Genoa. And there was a phrase then, we are winning and we are everywhere. And we don't always realize how powerful we are when we all link up. Over. I'll share that one.
Thank you, Phoenix. You see, one other thing we will talk about a lot, right, is about this intergenerational knowledge sharing. Because so many of these, I mean, the fact of the matter is, if we want to be harsh about it, is we are not where we were in the past. We've been rolled back quite a lot in terms of the leadership of our movements in the Global South. They used to know each other. The first president of the independence movement of my country, Ghana in West Africa, was actively writing at the time letters, handwritten letters to people like Fidel Castro and all of these people we hear about, right? That's how organized our movements were. That's how seriously we took ourselves as seeing ourselves as the change. That's why we have the XR being the change affinity network. We want to try and champion and promote that way of thinking. Let's own that we make change and we are those types of leaders. And that level of connected up is what you're talking about, Phoenix. It moves people. It motivates us to see that, sometimes when you're starting a new group, you're door knocking, you feel like you're literally on your own. And it's like this quite daunting thing of reintroducing yourself to your neighbors. But you're meant to be doing that, saying that, you're part of the global majority of people who are already doing this. We're late to the party. Let's go. And be able to share information that's inspiring of real battles, real gains being made. When we do that, then it completely shifts this conversation from, we need to do something in our part of the world to, we have, like you said, we've got numbers and we are winning. And what we're seeing with like the governments right now really backpedaling and, they're scared about us getting onto the streets every week and calling for a ceasefire, because that is the crux of the matter. There's also no real environmental movement that's serious without demilitarization and stopping the amount of, energy and materials and resources that are going into the bomb making and the vehicles that are these jets flying across the sky, right? So when our communities are rising up and fighting back against this, that needs to be represented. And even the small actions we did, and Charlie, I know you said you're in Stroud, connecting with the Rise folk. There's a video that, again, I'm going to have to try and do the flip camera thing, of a short video of which I'll just do it this way because it's kind of it's saved on a private drive. But just this year, before I move on, just this year, we were honored to take a delegation, a PRALER study visit delegation to West Africa. And so you might be able to see Robin from Rise is actually just right here. And we met with the largest union of students in Niger, and they gave a beautiful talk on how they've been mobilizing students for the last 10 years to shut down the streets, to decolonize. And they've also literally in the last couple of years expelled the military occupation. There was lots of French military tanks and weapons there, and there was a lot of extraction of uranium in the ground. And this was causing a lot of destabilization in the region. And so we were really blessed to have this moment where we were amongst all of these students in Niger, and they were teaching us the chants of decolonization, taking down imperialism, building back sovereignty. And this is one of the active battles and solidarity fundraisers that is currently ongoing, to connect people here to the youth and students and communities there who are really trying now to completely transform their education. They've now organized to have a national level committee to transform the curriculum. And the government even respects it because it's so popularly backed by, more than 80% of the people in the country. Big changes are happening, but you're never going to find it on BBC News, right? And so this is kind of the big challenge we've set ourselves, to look back to those examples of indie media, of the OSPAL, and to rebuild and just support where we can, the reconnecting of these movements for anti-colonialism.
Sorry, what's the OSPAL?
The OSPAL was an initiative back in the 50s, which was the Organization of Solidarity for Peoples of Africa, Asia, and America Latina. This was one of the big organs. It came out of the Cuban Revolution, actually, that organized conferences, brought together activists, liberation movements, national liberation struggles from around the world into an umbrella organization, where so much so that elders in the movement that I talked to grew up in villages in Ghana and learned about the Black Panthers in schools because pamphlets were reaching those villages. That was the level of organization, right? And so once again, the small things that we can do that go really far, when people say, I don't know what to do that's effective. Well, when we've linked up with students here and all they've done is turn their university essays into cool graphics and pamphlets, and we've been able to ship them to villages and schools, they're actively seeing real changes being made on the ground. And once we've got that feedback loop, we're actually now being able to inform and change whole educational processes. And just to list off a few things that have happened, since the launch of PRALER, there was this study visit this year, which is a really powerful way to kind of start to look at how we break the sanctions that are being organized against the Sahel countries, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger. We've been looking into the practical, there's been some, we managed to fundraise 2 years ago about £1,000, which built over 10 kilometers of radio station in connecting rural communities in Mexico. And I just want to emphasize that example, because that's one of my favorites, because it shows also how well resources go in the hands of communities who are really there for change, who are really at the grassroots. And then this year, we're cracking ahead now to this very, very, very busy autumn. Some of you might know that I'm involved very much in the Pan-African reparations movement and the campaigning that goes on around stopping the genocide and ecocide. We will have at the end of this, to initiate the DOC process, we have at the end of this month, the UK reparations conference that will be happening at Friend's House, which is going to move now to try to consolidate some of the reparations campaign into policy areas and action areas. Everyone's welcome. It's not for people of African heritage only. And then we're going to go into this DOC process, where we've been working to invite communities from the 3 different continents to come together. And in doing so, it's only because of some logistical issues we weren't able to come to, I think, Stroud, but there's going to be some meetings in Bristol, in London. I'll give you the link if you don't have it in the
Yeah, we can network that one. Good.
Yeah, it's on the praler.net/what-we-do. That is one of the most immediate things that we're trying to, that's the, in fact, I think it's the sign up link you've already sent through. That is something that people immediately, we need people to sign up to, mobilize the climate emergency centers. And that's going to be the starting point of actually meeting a delegation coming from the Global South. And then we can take those instructions back to our communities and then start to work on them and then create these, we've always talked about how the climate emergency centers start to become, if you remember back in the day, talking with Brother Lautaro about international solidarity hubs, having these hubs in our communities, which are beaming out information, regular basis, what's happening on the front lines, what can we do? Also keeping that energy flowing, keeping the dialogue going. And then when you have these media blackouts about what's really going on in the Middle East, you can go to your local center, you can find information, you can find merchandise, you can find posters. This is how we take back our streets. This is how we re-energize that feeling of connection. This is how we also challenge the very racist, xenophobic fascism that's emerging, that's trying to say that we're gonna have to go our own way. We can just battle that in a very practical sense. And so that's where the Decolonial Open University comes in, because one thing that has been a lot of people have challenged us about when we've been trying to set up PRALER is, we want to have real connections. And we've really taken the position recently that we in the coordination of PRALER are actually in the way. There are communities there actively who have their, whose voices need to be heard. You don't need to hear from Kobina, it's a kind of a luxury that I'm in contact with people on a daily basis. But these are the people that really and truly we need to find ways to harmonize efforts with, and not do it as like individualized, me having a friendship with this one other person. Let's have our communities know each other as communities, so that we don't also interfere with our own process of regeneration. We respect our autonomy, the right to equity, the right to self-determination, which is what a lot of our colonized indigenous communities are battling for that recognition. So there were a series of dates starting from the end of October right until the end of November in London, Oxford, Bristol, Sheffield, Birmingham. I would really recommend sign up to your nearest one. Sign up on the Action Network, share it with friends. It's not a thing for activists. I mean, there's also going to be an interfaith day for bringing indigenous knowledge into spaces with like church congregations, the Islamic community, particularly in London. Like, let's have real conversations across all of these fake borders that have been created. So I'd really say do try and sign up on the link that's been shared, and share it with your groups. It's been an uphill battle to pull this together. And we also realized that in the current scale of the world's crises and, World War III, let's name it, this might also be one of the last chances it's really possible for us to actually come and meet in person. And we came to that conclusion quite recently that, we need to give this everything so that when they're trying to shut things down, we already have those connections. And let's try and be on the front foot this time. And I say that because not long after we came back from the Sahel study visit, the Foreign Office then changed, the travel code on their recommended policies to like these becoming no-go zones. And this is after us sitting with this Google Drive and this drive, right, of all these videos showing ordinary people talk about decolonization and land sovereignty and their rights. And now these are no-go zones for, it doesn't mean you can't go. It might just mean that the insurance is going to cost you an arm and a leg. But this is what's happening. This is the global chess game. And this is what we think we can do something about. Now, before I just quickly switch in to the CECs and like the concrete proposals, there's the ongoing thing that PRALER is kind of doing, which is kind of we launched a reparatory justice fund. That's an ongoing staple of like the basic way for people to support. And we've had a lot of support. It's like an ongoing timer, because we're about to release our first report at the end of this month, because we've been wanting to be really clear and transparent about how funds are being used. And we've the council and committee that are overseeing it is full of elders and activists from different parts of the world who are like working on ways of also like resource sharing and drawing it down into their communities, and then sharing videos about the projects they're working on. we have, again, with the generosity and the campaigning and the running around of so many people, managed to raise £13,665. That can get spent down quite easily, but that is money that is going, 80% of that will go directly to Global South Community Resistance. The other 20% isn't for overheads, isn't for some nice office. It's also for all the people in the Global North who are linking in with those communities, who are actively, running campaigns here. So it's like, so we can actually be sharing those resources as well and redistributing stuff to the front lines of communities. So that's also one to just kind of celebrate. And for anyone who's on the call who's maybe been doing monthly donations, £2 here, £5 there, we also want to thank you, because just like I was giving that example earlier, for like £100, we've been able to get activists to have data in really rural areas for like a whole year. They will have data for the whole year, but that £50, £100 that people give, that's the ability to connect into much deeper places. That's big, right? And that's also just how far some of the resources can go when they're actually really reaching the people that are going to do stuff with it. So I'll move now to the CECs and then maybe have it open to just talk with people. And this is an image of Brother Jean, who is actually supporting through the Planet Repairs Internationalist Observatory, which is on the banner, projects to connect the displaced communities. There's lots of displaced communities in Burkina Faso due to the sort of destabilization and terrorism in the north. Again, we've actually, the Paris, which I'm part of, recently worked with the Africa Stream network. I don't know if people know about them. They were taken down off Instagram recently. But we worked with them on an expose that basically showed that US taxpayers were basically funding and training some of these militant elements in the north, because there was they're typical pastoralists from the Sahara region, and they were kind of like flying drones and ambushing Malian soldiers. So there was we ran a campaign to kind of expose the way in which that governments are still interfering in African affairs, and this is like, destabilizing communities. Communities have had to flee from the north, and this is all part of, this is all relevant to the climate, right? This is all part of the climate question, because the resources which are in these regions are the ones that are also being used to fund the energy transition, and the uranium that's in this region is really, really key for nuclear power in places like France. Like, these are real live battles, and that story also needs to be told. But Jean is one of the Paris liaisons, and has been setting up PRALER groups there to think about how we can share education. So we want to do more like Zoom dialogues where a climate emergency center could listen directly to someone like Jean, hear about what's going on the ground, and then through that create these plans where, schools, children are talking to each other, parents groups are talking to each other, textiles and knitters. If you've got a knitters group who just meet to knit, they can be working with women who are doing textiles in another part of the world. It's not about radical action. It's about, first and foremost, dialogue. It's first about recovering who we are as human beings. And I mean, there's another video of him there. And one of the campaigns that has made a bid for the PRALER Fund is a food sovereignty and food resilience program, where for about, I think it's about €220, they will be they'll be taking farming equipment and seeds to support some of these communities who have been displaced from their traditional lands, so that they have a place to also regenerate. And that will kind of take off the pressure on the governments, who are also kind of battling to secure sovereignty and all of this sort of stuff. So if that hasn't been an overload of information, what does this mean?
It's gold, but there's so much information in there. It's brilliant.
Well, I'm glad, because I'm not a good presenter, and I know this. But if that hasn't been, then the final question, I guess, is what does that mean for the climate emergency centers? And I was saying earlier that Phoenix and I and others from the ISN, Extinction Rebellion International Solidarity Network, had floated this idea of international solidarity hubs for some years now, and we really didn't get to it. Well, what happens, as a bit of a thought experiment, is what happens when, Keir Starmer, whoever it is, realizes that as they are realizing now, with actually this big school strike that's been announced for the 10th, that, you know, the young people and the future generations that they want to co-opt into their myth and mission are actively have already said, you know, forget this, and are already busy learning alongside their siblings around the world. They've already started to build new educational curriculums about repairing the planet, taking the knowledge from their elders and their ancestors seriously, are actively running their own campaigns to take back their lands and communities. And the whole sham just falls apart because we're talking to each other, we're connected, and we see ourselves as one global majority, not even global north, global south, one global majority who are the 99% and who are going to actually, you know, repair the planet. And what happens when from the climate emergency centers, we have these links into different communities, and we actually have climate emergency centers, they might have their different names for the different territories emerging in other parts of the world in their traditional styles. What happens when we did a drive back in March and managed to send, you know, ask people, look, have you got any spare phones or tablets in your house? We got 2 phones. You've got 2 phones, 1 laptop and a tablet, and they were received in, one went to Colombia and the rest went to Ghana. What happened? And those were the first that went into these schools. And what happens when they're loaded on those laptops and phones are videos from activists in the global north saying, hello, welcome, how you doing? Here's what we're working on. I know it sounds like a massive vision, but this is also why PRALER really is for everyone and anyone to get involved with at any level, because there is so much to be done. And it launched in 2022, but there's still, and it's based on lots of networks that are pre-existing us, yeah, for sure. But there's so much to build and there's so much to tie in, and we're still learning with each other. We're still critically engaging with each other. We still are, you know, battling with each other about what we're really trying to do. But we know we've seen these results, and how does that emerge when, you know, we can build these partnerships? And so that is really kind of the priority from the Mwisco perspective, that we find a way to connect into the CECs, sharing resources, number one, sharing lessons from grassroots globally and linking and hearing from freedom fighters directly, number two, building coordinated shared campaigns, number three, and then setting up, you know, solidarity shops and places where people can get access to, you know, badges, t-shirts, merchandise, materials. And that be a kind of a few steps in a process of formalizing a way that communities can be in dialogue with each other, communities can connect to each other, and we take our planet back. So just like to thank everyone for listening and appreciate your time. Welcome for questions as always, and hope to see you at the dock.
All right, that's brilliant. Thank you, Kobina. That's full of amazing information and an education along the way. Things I didn't know there about the 50s network and other ones. Just to say, you know, a little bit, and then if people want to make a comment, a question, a feedback, doesn't have to be a direct question, there is a heart-shaped react button at the bottom. You can do that to stick a hand up. We can react in different ways. If you want to ask a question, feedback, or comment, chuck that up so I can see. I'll bring it off direct. Just to say a couple of bits of feedback there while people decide some questions. You know, absolutely amazing what you're doing there. And, you know, conversations early on with Lautaro, what we would love to see with the climate emergency centers is to have a kind of adopt an activist, adopt a project, or adopt a town kind of project going on, so that, you know, a group in Guildford could adopt a project in Ghana, or, you know, a group in Birmingham could link with a group in Burkina Faso, or, you know, groups that are in Colombia or Brazil being forest defenders could link with Coventry, and then activists directly in those countries, when a forest defender is under threat in South America somewhere, they could actually raise the alarm and say, this person, you know, here's the information, here's the video, it's going on now, they're being threatened, and we need everyone to do this to raise awareness. And it does actually work, folks. What people have said is when international solidarity comes in on an embassy, comes in on the media, suddenly people who are threatening Earth defenders step back. And not just, you know, in crisis situations, let's build links and networks of solidarity that can be recycling, reusing, sharing, bringing people back and forth to help each other beyond all borders. It's one people, one planet. Over to Art Groupie, who's first off. And sorry, I think Dottie said he raised a physical hand, so I think Dottie was first. He said something in the chat. Dottie, then Art Groupie. Over.
Hi. really inspiring. Sorry, I only caught half of your talk, and I'm probably going to ask dumb questions as a result. But so I think what I've been thinking about while you've been talking is really about because I must confess I was listening to The Coming Storm just before I tuned into you because I'd forgotten. Slaps, know what you mean. But I think it's important because what I'm really sort of like into this idea of disruptors, you know, like there's the sort of like evil disruptors or like disruptors who work for capitalism. But I'm just thinking about, you know, obviously this is a sort of disruptor organization that's trying to kind of like change the pattern of education, change the subject matter and the kind of information that's being transmitted. And I guess really what I'm thinking is, you know, like the big burden, the big sort of like barrier to all these things really is about trying to get a snowball effect, you know. So, you know, think about Facebook 2000 and whatever, nobody'd heard of it, you know, it gets launched. And then it's like there's this thing about, you know, like early uptake and trying to get people who are of a certain mindset to want to get involved. And I'm just thinking, how do we think about what you guys are doing and use some of the tactics that the tech billionaires use or whatever to try and motivate more people, get more people in? Because I mean, CECs are great. I mean, I go to the CEC, you know, or like the One Planet Abingdon, and I speak to Michelle there, and she's like, yeah, you know, it's great what we're doing here, but like I want to go beyond sitting around giving people free cups of tea, because there is a lot to be done here. You know, there's a big change necessary. All those things we've been talking about absolutely need to get done. But the point that I'm thinking about is how do we engage? How do we branch out? You know, like how do we activate ourselves or activate networks or spread those networks and get out to people? Because I think the problem is that people are just, I don't know whether this is an unfair comment, but I just feel that people are very apathetic. I'm apathetic. Look, I'm lying in bed. You know what I mean? I'm apathetic. I'm like, I want to get engaged. I want to engage more people. And I want to get these wonderful projects to be more, you know, to get that you know, ball rolling. But I'm just thinking, yeah, strategizing. How do we reach out? How do we use social media? What I was also thinking is maybe we just need to like find another social media platform, not use Zoom, use something else. I mean, look at this format. It's awful. Like I can't see people. I have to like switch around. You know, there's things that we need to do that like meta stuff in a way about how to actually make this global thing happen again. I mean, it was funny that they were saying in this Coming Storm program, these weird people called Praxis that are, you know, wanting to become like the, you know, cause some sort of global catastrophe so that they can then become like philosopher kings and take over the world or whatever.
Okay.
You know, it's like, and they're going out and like, you know, photocopying memes and sticking them onto lampposts because they're going old school, you know. And it's like, well, should we do the same thing? You know, is it worth it? Are people really paying attention to posters on the streets? Can we activate all these social media networks, the TikToks, the whatever? Is it feasible to do that, or is it just totally the wrong format? Is it the wrong mentality? The medium is the message, right? And that's what I'm thinking about.
There's a lot in there, a lot to be thought about.
Yeah, so that was my point really. Like, you know, what are the strategies for that, and how do we get involved in thinking about those kind of connectivity strategies to make them more effective and work better?
Definitely improving the communication strategies. Kobina, do you want anything on that, or should we ask Art Groupie?
Yeah, can do quickly. I mean, the point is like, whatever you decide to do, it's going to contribute to something that's already ongoing and moving. I think one of the best ways that people need to really be looking at change making is that there is already a moving train. The question is what carriage you get on, where do you want to be of service. I think we need to not think so. We don't need to overthink so much, because one thing we found that has worked with us with PRALER and having these different groups and then new groups emerging in completely different time zones or with different tactics, is that it means that the conversation shifts and it's around what what your community needs. And so one of the first things in the original thing was that we set up these study action groups, the old school way of organizing with study action groups who get active in their communities. They start to think about what they can best do relevant to themselves. knowing that I don't know the context where you are better than you, right? So you know if your community locally looks at the lamppost or this bus stop religiously, you know if actually people are meeting at the church a lot. And then go from there about what Planet Repairs means to those people. And then what we can do after that, so you've got a process moving, is say, okay, well, look, you guys have your really cool arts group. We have artists that we're working with in X place. Why don't you do a solidarity fundraiser together? And that's kind of, you know, the way it's kind of organically kind of grown and information's being shared with lots of improvements to make. But I hope that makes sense.
Nice. That's very good. Think global act local. I think the old local one comes in there. Nice, Kobina. Art groupie, over.
Hi, so I'm not going to be able to talk very well today. A bit painful. Kobina, I was just going to wanting to link Kobina up with some Pan-African chats I have. Because I'm basically trying to do the same thing, but get it centrally into XR as well. So I'm working with a group in Nigeria. I think you met my colleague Friday when he comes to the big one. And I've also got now a French-speaking Pan-African group, which is organising on all sorts of fronts, including plastic pollution, including ECOP, including all the rest of it. I can't keep up with that chat because I can't bother to put it all in translate. And one français, I've got the English-speaking one, what I've put Phoenix and Gail in already. Maybe you should come in there as well, I think. Because exactly what we're trying to do in Nigeria right now is the very same thing, because the Niger Delta has obviously been decimated by a shell. So what we were thinking of, Friday was thinking of, he's got his climate conference coming up, actually, if I could publicise that to you, with women's groups in Nigeria and grassroots elders and leaders there, is to then have a mechanism for rolling out cheap renewable electricity. And I was also thinking of some kind of land remediation, for example, like mycelium soup, which wouldn't be expensive to implement. There's all this stuff going on. How do we link it up? And also, what was the other thing I was going to say? Your visits coincide, unfortunately, with, so I'm the EC of Arts right now, it coincide, unfortunately, with Ensure Survival, which I must attend. But how do we incorporate global justice into one of those days, especially the Tuesday, I think, on the ground in the City of London? That's another thing I'm trying to do. So I can't really, that's not really a question. I'm just going to throw that out of my mouth in your general direction. Please give me your phone number after.
Yeah, sounds good. I didn't realize the dates clashed, but good to know. And I think something to think about how they can feature. Maybe some bits for the end as well are going to line up, and then we'll be able to go from there.
Wicked.
Okay. I mean, linking up internationally, very, very important. So any other questions, comments, feedback there? How can we link up, you know, around the world, all these different good groups, you know, from Stroud to Strasbourg to Swaziland?
Could I just add a good news kind of a thing? You know that there was a 2040 report. There's always one when the president gets inaugurated, and this is from a couple of years ago, obviously when Biden was inaugurated. The fifth scenario in that is where civil society does join up globally and change something. The first three was wars with Russia, China, America, blah. The fourth one was called separate silos, where two halves of the world kind of split off. And the fifth one was the one that we're aiming for here, where we do all join up on the ground, exactly how you're talking about right now. And so that is possible. That's a report by the National Intelligence Agency in America. That is a likely scenario that we can do. That's what gives me hope. There you go.
Nice. What gives you hope, ladies and gentlemen? What makes us think we can link up around the world to make these things happen? To one of the things that, by all means, do stick your hands up if you want there or anything. But basically, one of the strongest our movement was when we had the indie media centers after Seattle anti-globalization movement. There was about 180 media centers set up all over the world. And to me, that's the strongest that our movement of movement has ever been. Movement of movements. And, you know, it linked up groups all around the world. We could go onto an indie media and find out what was going on in Hong Kong or Texas or Africa or Australia or Colombia or Sweden. And the beauty of that, I mean, I recently went to a media Tell the Truth conference thing organised by a lot of people who've been involved with recent movements, and they were talking about, you know, one of the biggest things as activists we need to concentrate on is changing the media, because the media forms so many people's opinions and minds. And you know, when we were citizens journalists, and I could come back from a demo and the mainstream news was saying the police said there was only 300 people there, and I could show photos and go, look, this was actually 3,000 people there, and it didn't happen like this, it happened like that. And then the media was watching indie media, and actually other media would then pick up on it. We need to re-establish both these physical centres of solidarity, like climate emergency centres that can link around the world to other centres, you know, but also reclaim the media. You know, your example of getting radios out to people and things like that. How can we reclaim our tools of communication and reclaim our spaces, because there's so much land and buildings, you know, been taken off us or unused or taken back for austerity. We need to get these spaces back, which is part of what we're doing with climate emergency centres. And so much happens when people do have space. All right, folks, we're in the last little section here, because we're usually about an hour-ish. Charlie, you want to make that comment about Stroud? I'm just reading. Anyone who wants to in the chat?
Yeah,
Charlie?
I just wanted to say thank you to everybody. That was really fascinating. I've got loads of information and I've copied all the links, and I'll share those with groups that I'm in contact with in Stroud. So very appreciated. And I've just put my Gmail address in the chat. If anybody wants to get in contact to discuss things further, I'd be really happy to. And I absolutely agree that we have to create spaces for people to be able to have these conversations and be able to learn together and to expand our minds about what's possible, because there's a lot of amazing stuff happening in lots of different places, and being able to share that and inspire each other and kind of give fuel to that fire, it feels really important to me. So it's lovely to hear other people doing similar stuff. So yeah, I look forward to seeing how it all develops.
That's brilliant, Charlie. Thanks for that. I really lifted me up.
Just a quick one. Can I just ask?
And Paolo, I want to say, yeah, go on.
Just very quickly, because Kobina mentioned that there is going to be something in Oxford, and I live in Oxford or near enough, and I just wondered if you had a date for that. I think I signed up to the right thing when you sent a link. I don't know if I did it right,
yeah,
but might be helpful to know.
Some of them, Kobina, in the chat. We'll save them.
Yeah, the doc is going to Oxford on the 8th of November, I think.
That's my birthday, man.
The universe provides.
All right, I'm there. That's my birthday gift.
Oh, that's providers used to say, yes. Great.
Okay,
Well,
great.
Put the dates in or any links there, Kobina. We will network and try and get them out next things. Paolo, just coming over. I don't know if you want to say anything there. You've been involved with a lot of different recent movements, groups, and international groups and things. Were you involved with the International Solidarity Movement at all, or?
Yeah, the last time I saw Kobina was at SOAS. I went back to Germany shortly after that, and I mean, I'm just so happy to see the way you've been growing since then. Wonderful. And yeah, it'd be great if I can do a little bit again sometime.
Good to see you, Paolo.
All right, folks, I think we're about coming up to the hour. So what to say? I'll just tell it on and over to Kobina for sort of parting words, whatever you want to sum up. But we would really like to see, I mean, there's 28 climate emergency centres now. They are all autonomous and independent around the UK. We're not going to tell any of them how they run themselves or do whatever. I liked a couple of words I scribbled down. I liked your autonomy around the different centres and groups you have around the world with PRALER, and about equity and the right to self-determination. You know, we've set up an autonomous network of many different groups, and groups don't necessarily, they call themselves by many different names. Well, I think there's a group in Kenya and a group in Uganda that are linked up on the Climate Emergency Centre Network, and I've been sent one picture of like this Kenya Climate Emergency Centre. They call it something else as well, but it says the Kenya Climate Emergency Centre. We need to link up. We need to reclaim space. We need to have spaces for our communities, elders and youngers, to mix together and share knowledge and share resources and share solidarity. So big up what PRALER is doing. Get involved, network their events, and let's link up. It's about solidarity, not charity. It's about linking up directly with activists, with groups, with towns and cities across the world, beyond all borders. And let's really get on with helping each other. It's pretty critical at the moment. We've got to And last one before I hand over to Kobina, one for the anti-globalization movement. We are winning and we are everywhere. It doesn't always seem like that at certain points, but we are actually winning. We are actually everywhere. Kobina, over to you for final comments. Thank you so much for coming and sharing the great work of everything you're doing. Over to Kobina for final parting comments. Over.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say thanks, everyone. The things are moving forward. It's like, do try and be good to see some of you at all the stuff that's coming up. And then, yeah, there's some really, I mean, the really practical immediate stuff, sharing the links, supporting the PRALER Fund. There's some merchandise that we just touched down, and it's going to, once you order it, it'll get shipped out the next day. Trying to get quite good at that. And yeah, hopefully we can see how this stuff can grow, because it is urgent, but it's the things that keeps me hopeful and active every day. So I hope it's been able to get some of the Planet Repairs message forwards for everyone. I'm wishing you all well as well going into this winter.
Brilliant. All right. Thank you very much for that. I'm just going to stop the recording. Feel free to beam out if you need, or stay around and have a bit of discussion and chat those who have time. Stopping recording.